Hello and welcome to this session. In today's session, we'll be looking at Kedarnath Singh's Where Would I Go? So that poem, Where Would I Go, would be the centerpiece of today's discussion. But towards the end of it, we'll be comparing Where Would I Go with other poems, say by Salma and some of the tribal poems for this course. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this session on regional poetry in translation. Today we're going to look at Kedarnath Singh's Where Would I Go? Let me first read the poem for you. Where would I go? I shall only stay here, like a handprint on a door, just to be there. I'll be hidden in the smell of a suitcase, sitting on an old ledge. I will remain buried in a register book under the letters where my permanent address is written. Or if I can, I will be the bell the donkeys wear, carrying salt up steep slopes or a nail on a boatman's bridge. Where would I go? You will see, everything will stay as it is, only my routine will change. When the birds return in the evening, I will also return, and in the morning, when they fly, I will fly away with them. So this is the poem. Now I'm going to invite Mridula to summarize the poem. So that's how we begin to analyze a poem. We begin with the contents. So what in essence is the poem about?
The poem is about displacement.
Mm-hmm.
When you read the poem, you understand that the poet, it is in the form of a dramatic monologue.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking to somebody saying that he doesn't want to move from this place.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to establish his identity, saying that he's like the handprint on the door, he's like the smell on the suitcase, and he's like the letters that is buried in a register book. And he also compares himself with that of a bell or that the donkeys wear and all such things. So we understand that there is a ripple that is created in his mind. So probably he is very anxious about the things that is happening around. So he's just trying to assert his identity, saying that I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to stay here.
Okay. Let me just summarize in one line. This poem is about a person who doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't want to go away. And he tries to respond to that crisis. Where would I go? I can't go anywhere. I will stay here. Right? So his unwillingness to leave this world is the subject, I would think, of this particular poem. Now, let's talk more about the narrator. Who is the narrator? What kind of a person he or she is? Is it a he or a she?
Since it is written by Kedarnath Singh, we can assume that it is a male narrator.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be a he or a she. It can be interpreted in any way, and he talks about how he wants to stay here.
Yeah. So let me just go back. The narrator is not the same as the writer. We need to understand that.
Yes.
Yeah, there is no equivalent between the speaker of a poem and the writer of the poem. So that is something we need to understand. But we kind of tend to assume that if it's by a female poet, the speaker is female, and vice versa, right? We got to find out clues about the gender, the class, and other contexts for the speaker from the details of the poem, right? There is no gender-specific referencing within the text of the poem Where Would I Go? But there are certain details in the poem which suggest that it's most likely to be a male, right? For example, the most important detail that kind of indicates that this figure is possibly a male is in that reference to a register book.
Yes.
Right? I will remain buried in a register book under the letters where my permanent address is written. So a register book is an official document, right? And it's usually the male of the species who is found in register books, usually, statistically speaking,
Yes.
across the ages, right? It's highly likely that it is a male who is the person who has a permanent address, right? The permanent address. The female usually doesn't have a permanent address.
Yes.
Usually, let me just underline that. Idea. Usually, right? So he's likely to be a man who is working, who has worked in institutions, right? So that his name is important enough to be recorded in a register book under the letters. Perhaps the first letter of his surname, and under that letter his permanent address is referenced. So this is a detail which suggests that possibly he's a male. There are other details. The other details suggest, these are very subtle details which are interpreted by my reading to suggest that he's possibly a male. Look at the material object, the bell, right? And the object of a nail, very hard, objects. Nail, which is kind of supporting a structure. You nail something together, right? You nail pieces together so that you can have a structure that can stand and do its work. So all these kind of rough, strong structures are associated with the male identities. Right, it's even difficult to kind of it's even perhaps difficult for a female to imagine such metaphors to describe her status, her place.
Yes.
So it's perhaps I'm constantly qualifying by saying perhaps, likely, usually. So these are all qualifiers that I'm using. I'm not saying that the female cannot ever use such metaphors. I'm saying this is the usual, figurative tradition that we have seen over the years. So nail, bell, and look at the beast of burden, donkey, carrying a load of salt. It's heavy duty work, hard manual labor, and he's kind of associating him with that kind of labor, right? So these kind of labor, carrying. Right, and these kind of labels are associated with the masculine, aura, the masculine identities. So these are some of the reasons which I think make us understand that the speaker is probably a male, most likely to be a male. Right. Now, my second question is: what are the other characters or things that you come across in the poem, and what kind of impact that those characters or things have on the meaning of the poem?
When you read it, you understand that he is talking about his everyday experience in some way, because when you see the pattern of this poem, he talks about he talks about the handprint. It's as if like if he is a working man, he's talking about his entry into an office. Then he talks about the ledger. That is where he talks about the suitcase. Secondly, that is the thing that he carries. Then he talks about the register book, and then he talks how he slogs like a donkey, and he talks about his burden of being the breadwinner. And so we understand that he's the one who supports the family.
Let's just take a minute to reflect further. Where would I go? I shall only stay here like a handprint on a door just to be there, right? Doors suggest domestic habitation. It can suggest professional institutions. It can signify anything. It's just an entry. It's just a structure that allows you access, right? So we don't know what else is beyond that. right? But you very interestingly point out that the second reference is to a suitcase, and suitcase has its own associations with the professional world, the idea of travel, the idea of kind of safekeeping records and things, right? Possessions, right? I quite agree. I quite like the way you're kind of connecting these two things. But I just want to bring your attention to this idea of just to be there. I have my handprint on the door just to be there, right? And I also thought that he has his handprint because he can, right? He has the power, the capacity to leave his handprint on the door, right? He has the power there. That's the subtext, right? And the very idea of leaving imprints, leaving your mark, suggests, as I said again, the idea of the power that you have to leave handprints, traces, right? And it also suggests a kind of ownership, right? Ownership, possession. You are successful enough, you're powerful enough to own things, materially or figuratively, right? That idea is there. I'll be hidden in the smell of a suitcase, in the smell of a suitcase sitting on an old ledge. Right? Again, the idea of not leaving, I'm there, at least my smell would be there. I will still be connected to that suitcase. I'm not going away. Within the smell, right? Within that suitcase is a smell that belongs to me, right? And the idea is that perhaps this is a person who is dead, but his spirit is still kind of revolving in a material world, right? In objects and in aromas, in flavors, and in the natural world, right? So he has left his handprint, he has left his smell within a suitcase which is long forgotten in an old ledge. But what is interesting to us, I think, is the kind of objects that he brings up. The memory of this figure is associated with particular objects, not with domestic things, not with the kitchen equipment or with any ideas related to the kitchen, not with the domestic sphere, which is why I said there's no reference to, I think at least to me, there's no kind of suggestion of a feminine world at the back of this poem. It's not leading us there. We are outside of that feminine domestic sphere, aren't we? I mean, we can assume that he would have been the breadwinner. It's most likely that he would have been the breadwinner. But what is fascinating is that there is no reference to his domestic sphere which would have included a female identity at its center, right? Unlike the case with Dilip Chitra's Father Returning Home, where the entire poem is like seen through the lens of a child, the child of the father, right? The father figure. So this is a very interesting point in that we don't get that private sphere at all, right? And I just want to correct that point that you mentioned, that I will be the bell that the donkeys wear. He's not exactly the donkey which is carrying that load of salt, but the bell. Close but not the same.
Yes.
He's close to that manual labor, right? There's a subtle distinction. So he is the bell that the donkeys wear to make that noise for some kind of caution, whatever, for some kind of sign, but he is not that donkey carrying salt. He is a nail, but he is not the boatman, right? He is a nail on the bridge, but not the boatman who is kind of associated with other kinds of labor. So he's part of that machinery, the machinery of a particular class associated with labor, right? But he is not a figure who is literally doing it, because we can get a sense that he is perhaps a clerk or perhaps a person who has a desk job, right? Because that idea of having permanent addresses suggests a particular kind of class for the speaker.
Yes.
Right? If you own a house with a door, and if you have an old ledge, if you have a suitcase, then the association is that you're perhaps low middle class, right? So that kind of associated set of signification comes through. Yeah. What else were we going to talk about? Now, what are the things that populate this world tells you about the nature of this world, right? So a door, a suitcase, an old ledge, a register book, letters, importance given to text,
Yes.
and books, those objects, right? And then bell, nail, and then we come to the natural world through the reference to the birds, right? So what he's trying to say is that I will be part of the material world as well as the natural world, right? So there's a kind of a dispersal, yeah? What do you think of the tone?
I feel that it's very personal,
Yeah.
and it's like he's asserting something.
Yeah. Keep going.
Because he compares himself with that of a handprint, and as you said, the smell and even the letters. He's comparing himself with. He says that he'll be buried in a register book under the letters. You see that there is a sense of inseparable. You cannot separate handprint from that of a door. You cannot separate smell from that of a
Yes.
He's
Yes.
so he's blended with all these things so well that you cannot separate him from it.
Yeah,
So-
correct. So I want to pick up on that word of assertion. There is an assertiveness, there is an assertion, there is a declaration, right? A statement that I'm not going anywhere, I will only stay. But it's said in such a beautiful, melodious, set of words and ideas that it's not jarring. You tend to kind of understand the longing of that spirit, the seeker's spirit who doesn't want to go away, but hidden in that kind of beautiful set of ideas is this very powerful assertion that I'm here to stay in numerous ways. Right, in multiple ways, like a handprint, like the smell, like the register. But register is pretty interesting because it gives you immortality in some ways, right? It's like almost Shakespearean in the claim that it makes, right?
Yeah.
As long as eyes can see and things
Yes,
like that. And so he is kind of seeking immortality, and that also makes us self-conscious in the sense that that idea is also textually through the genre of a poem given to us, right? So double immortality there for you, framed by this poem too, isn't it? So you will see everything will stay as it is. Who's this you? You will see everything will stay as it is. What is this everything? That's the question. I have two questions. Who's the you and who's the everything? What is the everything? Yeah. So everything is all this, the mundane, the ordinary, the routine, donkeys wearing bells and going up slopes and steep slopes. It's hard labor, steep slopes. There's a repetition of that consonant S, right? Smell, suitcase, sitting, steep slopes. So that sound is repeated. It has a kind of a soothing, melodious, tone to it, isn't it? It creates that mood, that lulling mood, putting us in comfort, isn't it? We will agree with whatever, we will accept his philosophy, isn't it? Only my routine will change. And we do not know what that routine is. When the birds return in the evening, I will also return in the morning. When they fly, I'll fly with them. So you can see how that kind of transition is made from the material to the natural world, right? From doors and suitcases and register books to kind of flying with the birds, returning with the birds. So there's a movement there, right? What further thoughts do you have? What about the structure of the poem? Do you have any thoughts about that? Where would I go is a refrain, right? The repetition of an idea of a particular set of words
Yes.
time and again in this poem. So the title is repeated, where would I go, in the first line as well as just before the concluding stanza, right? And it's a rhetorical statement, isn't it? It's not really a question. There's no question mark at the end of that phrase, where would I go? It's just a statement, I'm going to be here only, right? In this place. Nobody can shift me, push me out of this system. So that assertion, I think, is most likely to come from a male psyche, the idea of being in control, being everywhere, right? Being everywhere, right? With the birds, with the donkeys, with smells. There's a kind of an omnipotence, isn't it? That omnipresence and omnipotence there's omnipresence. Omnipotence is an idea which I am using because of the power of this figure to go anywhere, be anywhere. That gives him a kind of a power, right? To be associated with things like bridges which connects people, which kind of displays the power of societies, the power to build something like that, regardless of the fact that it is small or medium-sized or massive. It indicates the fact that you are capable of producing something, building something, being a part of something that can connect people, right? Bridges, right? Bridges. So all these are associations of power, right? Not in a very manifest, aggressive, in your face, but these are all subtle suggestions which indicate the power of the speaker, right? Think about this poem and go back to, see, for example, Salma, perspective.
Yes.
Right? Can you compare both this world with that one? Perspective?
In one sense, this poem talks about the mundane life, and Salma also talks about that. And once you read this one as in the perspective of a man, and that in the perspective of a woman, you understand the differences, the worldly differences in the kind of things that they have to face day-to-day life, in their day-to-day lives. And there is a sense of shock in that poem, but you don't find it here.
Yes.
Here he is okay about everything.
Yes, absolutely. He's okay with the world.
Yes.
Right? He's okay with the world. That's a very important distinction. And that kind of distinction is something you will realize only when you put these two poems together and see the two worlds. In Why Would I Go, you don't see, as I said, the private world at all. The world of women, babies, children, domesticity, kitchen fire, whatever, right? You don't see that world at all. And it isn't that you should always bring in that world, but when you present your public world in this way, where everything seems to be fine, then you begin to wonder, because you have read other poems, you have come across other poems which talk about so many complexities in those kind of worlds, and then you begin to wonder, right? This is a person who's okay with the world he has occupied, and now time has come for him to leave, and he is not leaving, right? And then you think about Salma, you think about the tribal women, those tribal women who give birth and then who want to kind of use the birds as messengers to send a word to their relatives and demand what they are owed, perhaps as a ritual, perhaps as a gift, right? Remember the woman who has given birth to a son who wants saris, multicolored saris, right? You think about that world and this world, and there's such a chasm between the two, right? Okay, so go on. What further comparisons would you find between perspective and this one?
Again, this idea of birds recur in both these poems. There, in Salma's perspective, that bat tells her who she is, or like she that's like a sudden revelation for her. But here, these birds give him. He is associating it with freedom. He says that he will fly in the morning just like them, or like when it is time for him to go back to his house, he will go back. Just like how birds return to their house. So he's associating his life with that of birds. Like he's comparing his life with that of birds. But the idea is used differently by these two poets.
So let's pick up on that use of the bird image in both these poems. There we have a bat. It's a shocking image, to pick up on your earlier idea of shock in Salma's poem. It's a shocking image in the sense that birds are associated with something eerie, unpleasant, supernatural, associated with darkness and gloominess and perhaps bad omen, right? So bat has that kind of set of associations, unpleasant, negative associations. And here it's just birds, and in Where Would I Go, it's a common bird. And if you look at that translation which is available online, we have a beautiful image of a bird which has the morning sun as its backdrop. You can go check it out online. It says 3 poems by NPTEL-NOC translated. So it's a very positive image. It's an image of hope and optimism and joy and freedom, right? So those are the kinds of associated images when you kind of think about the birds in NPTEL-NOC's Where Would I Go. The birds are free to come and go. The recurrence is natural. That's the way of life. It's the natural order. The coming and going and the freedom and the joy, right? But that's not the case with Salma, right? The bats are staring at her and telling her that your life, your human life, is upside down, topsy-turvy, just as we are, right? Just as the bats hang upside down in trees. Right, so the bat is kind of telling her that idea indirectly to that Salma, to that figure produced by Salma, a mother who is struggling to take care of her child and also do some reading, right? So we have different connotations for birds in these two poems, and the birds become a signifier of what is not right in Salma and what is kind of, the way of life in Where Would I Go, right? So that's a male world. Everything is fine and dandy within the confines of Where Would I Go. I'm not saying that the male world is utterly without any kind of complexity, problem, and issues. I'm just saying the male world that we see within the text of Where Would I Go is a non-problematic world in my reading. Yeah.
But when you read it, you also understand that it is not a colorful world. It's very. Maybe when I read it, I felt like it's for him. He find it very boring.
Boring. Yes. Oh yeah.
It's as if like he's existing and not living.
Very good. Okay. So, I mean, it's perfectly all right to have your reading of this poem in the way, it makes sense to you. Yeah. Fine. Yeah, it's melancholic. Yeah. I could sense a bit of melancholia. And the melancholia for me arose from the fact that he's kind of looking back into the world, the material world, over which he hovers. He's hovering over that world, but he's not within it, right? So the idea that he has left that world, but is not completely away from it. He can look back and try to find his persona in such kind of handprints, and the old smell within suitcases kind of makes us sympathize with the fact that he is not actively engaging with that material world. He's not literally part of the process, right? He's there, but not functional, which connects with your idea of being bored. You get the sense that perhaps he's not living, he's existing. It's quite all right to think that, because he's not existing. He's not existing because he's dead and gone. He's no longer part of the process, right? Which is why he's perhaps associating himself with bells, not with donkeys, right? Not with the boatman, not with the boat perhaps which is kind of moving through, moving across rivers, but perhaps with a nail which is just there, right? Supporting, not actively doing anything else. Perhaps I'm just stretching this idea further and trying to see kind of parallels with other images that come across. So you're quite right in the sense that there's a sense that this guy is not actively living, but is just kind of being a spectator in some sense. And being a spectator can sometimes be boring, you want to do things, be part of it, to make things exciting for you. So he's a spectator because he's kind of, his time is over, right? Time for him to go leave, and that's what he does by becoming a spirit that can come and go with birds, right? So he has kind of transferred his spirit to the natural world in some sense, right? So what else, Mridula? Any further comparisons with any of the poems that you can think about that we have read for this course?
With this course, when I read this, I felt like this persona can be compared with that of the persona of Tiresias that appears in Wasteland. But with other poems.
No, I'm talking about regional Indian poetry that. What about the other tribal poem, Chill Out? What do you think about the male speaker there?
The male that poem definitely talks about the male world, but he is happy about.
Yes.
He's very actively involved in the cultural practice, but there is a definitely. You understand that there is a female figure, and you understand that he does not want her to be an active participant in the societal functions, or like there's a clear-cut boundary. But here that figure is absent, female figure is absent. But there you get this sense of happiness because he's practicing to play that bamboo flute. So songs are definitely associated with happiness.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have discussed that poem earlier, and we saw that it can be a mock serious poem. It doesn't have to be taken as a really serious poem where the male speaker says just go away and do whatever is suitable for you, such as eating a chili or just something like that. So there the male speaker, as we saw, is trying to engage himself with the cultural practice of flute playing, and flute playing is important in the sense that music is important for the well-being of the community, because common traditions, common ideas, common values are kind of channeled through this collective melody of the society, of the community, right? So he has a very communal, a societal, as well as a kind of a professional role to play. And what is interesting about the poem is that the female is not completely eliminated from the space of the text, right? In that poem, we have a female speaker within the text of the poem, and she is very overtly addressed. She is almost included. Right, and there is a sense that yes, we know that her demands are there, it will be taken care of, and she has to wait. So that kind of impression is given in that poem. Whereas in Where Would I Go, there is a you, but we're not very sure about the gender of that you. There's no other detail in this poem to suggest that it is a she. Right, that he's addressing, a female figure. It could be another male figure. It could be the male reader, right, whom the speaker is kind of taking into confidence, right. So there in Chill Out, it's culture, the importance of culture through music is emphasized, and here we see the professional world of registers and suitcases and so on. There's more joy, as you said, because it's music, and music is associated with communal feeling, people coming together, communal in that sense, the collective spirit, right? And the private world is also acknowledged. The private world of romance, of sexuality is acknowledged and is set aside, right? And we also see that there is a power in the female to kind of disrupt this kind of collective processes of the community, that she has some kind of agency to kind of enter into the world of text.
Yes.
Right? The male speaker is allowing her to be a part of that kind of world. She's included but relegated. I think that is better than not being brought in at all, right? So that impression is pretty clear that we get when we read these two poems, right? So any other comparisons that you think you can make with Where Would I Go? What we can do now is, I think we can read the Lipchitra for now. We'll do a quick reading of this poem, and then in the next session, we will unpack it further. What do you say?
Sure.
Yeah. Can you read, please?
Sure. Father Returning Home by Dilip Chitre. My father travels on the late evening train, standing among silent commuters in the yellow light. Suburbs slide past his unseeing eyes. His shirts and pants are soggy, and his black raincoat stained with mud, and his bag stuffed with books is falling apart. His eyes, dimmed by age, fade homeward through the humid monsoon night. Now I can see him getting off the train, like a word dropped from a long sentence. He hurries across the length of the grey platform, crosses the railway line, enters the lane. His chappals are sticky with mud, but he hurries onward. Home again, I see him drinking weak tea, eating a stale chapati, reading a book. He goes into the toilet to contemplate man's estrangement from a man-made world. Coming out, he trembles at the sink, his cold water running over his brown hands. A few droplets cling to the graying hairs on his wrists. His sullen children have often refused to share jokes and secrets with him. He will now go to sleep, listening to the static on the radio, dreaming of his ancestors and grandchildren, thinking of nomads entering a subcontinent through a narrow pass.
Okay, thank you. So this is again a male world, but we see the intersections with the female, the domestic world as well, because we have the daughter, the child. I'm assuming that it's an instinctive association that it's perhaps a female child who feels alienated from the father figure, because that cultural assumption is subconscious, isn't it? It just comes through unintended, right? Yes. What is interesting, in terms of setting, is that this is a very concrete world that we get in the Chitra, isn't it? It's a very concrete physical world, but whereas in Where Would I Go, we get the world in images. It's very imagistic. Where would I go? Small images here and there, image of a handprint, a suitcase, an old ledge, unconnected, in some ways, right? But also, if you want to connect it, you can try and attempt that as well. But you can get a world through a pastiche of images. But here it's a very, very linear narrative, which kind of gives you specific details about the world through which this male figure is traversing, right? So setting is pretty strong.
Yes.
So when we meet again in the next session, I think we'll take the details one by one and see what kind of meaning is added to the poem through the choice of details, right? And think about the philosophy of the poem and perhaps connect it with the philosophy of Where Would I Go. In Where Would I Go, it's a kind of a existentialist idea which is communicated by the speaker, saying that there is no absence. There's no absence for this male speaker.
Yes.
There's always presence, right? There's always presence, and that presence is asserted, as you pointed out. It's an assertive way of putting it. It's an assertive perspective, not the perspective of Salma, right? That topsy-turvy perspective of feeling alienated, right? So that kind of idea is not communicated. There's no alienation there. There's oneness. There's oneness with the world. He's okay with the world, so he's quite comfortable. So that kind of presence, a very strong presence, is there in Where Would I Go? But that presence becomes complicated in Dilip Chitra's Father Returning Home. It's highly problematized. So we can see the fractures. We can see the crisscross of fractures in this male world of the speaker, sketched by Dilip Chitra. So thank you for your ideas for today. We'll meet again and discuss further.